In this class, we are going to see about the anatomy and physiology of the liver. Before that, a few things that I would like to tell is about the pancreas. It produces pancreatic juice. It produces around 1200 to 1500 ml of pancreatic juice, which is a clear, colorless liquid consisting mostly of water, some salts, and several enzymes. It produces mainly the enzymes are pancreatic amylase, which is a carbohydrate digesting enzyme, and trypsin, which is a protein digesting enzyme, and pancreatic lipase, which is a triglyceride or fat digesting enzyme. Now remember, we'll be dealing about this in the later class. Now we'll go on to the liver. The liver is an organ found only in vertebrates. It detoxifies various metabolites, synthesizes proteins, and produces biochemicals necessary for digestion. As you can see the picture of the liver, anteriorly you can find the diaphragm and the anterior abdominal wall. Posteriorly is just behind, you have the esophagus, inferior vena cava, the aorta, the gallbladder, vertebral column, and the diaphragm. Laterally you can see the lower ribs and the diaphragm. Superiorly you can see the diaphragm and the anterior abdominal wall. Inferiorly below you can find the stomach, the bile ducts, the duodenum, hepatic flexure of colon, and the right kidney. Now we'll go into a little bit about the anatomy of the liver. The liver is the heaviest gland of the body. It is reddish, brown, wedge-shaped organ with 4 lobes of unequal size and shape. It weighs around 1.44 to 1.66 kg. Width is around 15 centimeter. As I told you, it is both the heaviest internal organ and the largest gland in the human body. And I already, as I told, you find the gallbladder, which is a pear-shaped sac. It is also located in the depression of the posterior surface of the liver. Now coming on to the anatomy of the liver. The liver is almost completely covered by the visceral peritoneum, and the liver is divided into 2 principal lobes. One is the right lobe and the left lobe. The right lobe is larger than the left lobe, and you can see that it is divided, the liver is divided by the falciform ligament. The left and the right lobe is divided by the falciform ligament, and if you see, you have even though the right lobe is it is considered, it includes the quadrate lobe. The right lobe has a quadrate lobe and a inferior quadrate lobe and a posterior caudate lobe. So these are the 2 lobes that you can see both. And now as you see, the free border of the falciform ligament, you have the ligamentum teres. It is nothing but a fibrous cord that is a remnant of the umbilical vein of the fetus. This extends from the liver to the umbilicus. Now the parts, you have the gallbladder also just underneath posteriorly underneath the liver. Now the functions of the liver are, it helps in synthesis of proteins are produced, and here it is secreted by the liver, and the liver plays a major role in carbohydrate, protein, amino acid, and lipid metabolism. It helps in breaking down all of these into simpler molecules. The liver is responsible for the breakdown of insulin and other hormones. Insulin, as I told, it is produced by pancreas. It helps in the breakdown of this insulin. The liver breaks down bilirubin via glucuronidation, facilitating its excretion into bile. The other functions of the liver are it stores a multitude of substances including glucose in the form of glycogen. This is a very important function. Any excess glucose is stored in the liver in the form of glycogen, a complex molecule. When we need energy, during that time this glycogen is broken down into glucose. Vitamin D, vitamin A, vitamin B12, vitamin K, iron and copper are also stored in liver. The liver also produces albumin, the most abundant protein in the blood serum. It contains phagocytes which destroy the damaged erythrocytes and foreign substances using phagocytosis. Phagocytosis is the process of destruction and killing of these erythrocytes. Now the blood supply is through hepatic artery and the venous drainage is through the hepatic veins. Now little bit about the liver, little bit to tell about the liver. As you can see, the lobes of the liver are made up of many functional units called lobules. A lobule consists of specialized epithelial cells called hepatocytes. Hepatocytes are specialized cells in the liver. They are arranged in irregular pattern around the central vein. Now, if you see, bile is secreted, which is secreted by the hepatocytes. It enters the bile canaliculi and it enters the gallbladder and it is getting stored in the gallbladder. Now you have the right and the left hepatic ducts. As you can see, it unites and exits the liver as a common hepatic duct, and then the common hepatic duct, it joins the cystic duct which comes from the gallbladder, and the hepatic and the cystic duct together forms the common bile duct which joins in the duodenum. Now we'll go on. So this is about the liver. Now we'll go on to the gallbladder. The gallbladder is a small hollow organ where the bile is stored and concentrated before it is released into the small intestine. In humans, the pear-shaped gallbladder lies beneath the liver. What is this bile? Now, if you can just to tell a little bit about the bile is nothing but it is secreted by the hepatocytes. Around 800 to 1000 ml of bile is produced per day or secreted per day by the hepatocytes. The bile is yellow, brownish or olive green liquid. It has a pH of 7.6 to 8.6 and it consists mostly of water and bile acids, bile salts, cholesterol, a phospholipid called lecithin, bile pigments and several ions. These bile salts, which are sodium and potassium salts, they play a role in emulsification. What is emulsification? This is nothing but the breakdown of larger lipid globules into suspension of droplets about 1 micrometer in diameter and in absorption of lipids following their digestion. Now coming on to the structure of the gallbladder. As you can see in the picture, this gallbladder sits in the shallow depression below the right lobe of the liver, that is grey blue in life. Now the length of the gallbladder is 7 to 10 centimeter or 2.8 to 3.9 inches. The diameter of it is 4 centimeter or 1.6 inch. The gallbladder has a capacity of about 50 milliliters ml. The gallbladder is shaped, the excess bile it can get stored in the gallbladder. It is shaped like a pear, as you can see in the next picture, with its tip opening into the cystic duct. So the tip of the gallbladder opens into the cystic duct. The gallbladder is divided into 3 sections: the fundus, the body and the neck. The fundus, again I repeat, the body and the neck. Now little bit about the fundus. As you can, the main function of this gallbladder is mainly to store bile, also called gall, and it is needed for the digestion of fats in food. Bile that flows through the small vessels into the larger hepatic duct and ultimately through the cystic duct, as you can see in that picture. Initially it flows through the hepatic duct and then through the cystic duct. This is called as the hepatic duct and this is the cystic duct. They join together to form the common bile duct, and then they join into the pancreatic duct also joins into the common bile duct. The blood supply is through the cystic artery and the venous drainage is through the cystic veins. Now we'll go on to the next organ, digestive organ, that is the small intestine. The small intestine or the small bowel, it is the part of the gastrointestinal tract between the stomach and the large intestine and is where most of the end absorption of food takes place. If you see the structure, the length of it is between 3 meters to 5 meters and the diameter is 2.5 to 3 centimeter or 1 inch. The small intestine begins at the pyloric sphincter of the stomach. It coils through the central and the inferior part of the abdominal cavity and opens into the large intestine. The parts of the small intestine are, it is divided into 3 regions. The duodenum, this is the shortest region and is retroperitoneal. That means it is placed behind. It starts at the pyloric sphincter. Duodenum starts at the pyloric sphincter of the stomach and ends about 25 centimeter until it joins with the jejunum. Now the jejunum, it is about 1 meter long or 2.5 meter long. It connects the duodenum to the ileum. The duodenum, I forgot to tell, is 20 to 25 centimeter in length and it is shaped like a C. The jejunum, it joins the ileum and the ileum measures about, if you can see the ileum, it measures about 3 meter long and it is the final section of the small intestine. It joins the large intestine at the ileocecal sphincter. There are small projections here called villi, which is similar to the jejunum. Now going on to the functions of the small intestine. Here a little bit in the functions, a little bit about in the small intestine. The mucosa of the small intestine forms a series of finger-like villi projections that are 0.5 to 1 millimeter long, and more number of villi are present, which increases the surface area of the epithelium and it makes it available for absorption and digestion and gives the intestinal mucosa a velvety appearance. Now coming on to the functions of the small intestine, the initial function is digestion. Here the small intestine is the place where most chemical digestion takes place. Many of the digestive enzymes acts in the small intestine. They are secreted by the pancreas and liver and enter the small intestine via the pancreatic duct. The digestion of proteins and carbohydrates also takes place here. The second function is absorption. The digested food that passes here, it passes into the blood vessels in the wall of the intestine either through diffusion or by active transport. Diffusion is nothing but mainly here is the transport of molecules or ions from a lower area to a lower pressure to a higher pressure. From a higher pressure to a lower pressure. The small intestine is a site where most of the nutrients from the ingested food are absorbed. And the third purpose is immunological. Here the small intestine supports the body's immune system. They have something called Peyer's patches. They provide immunity and they appear to contribute to the host immune system. The blood supply to the small intestine is through the celiac trunk, the superior mesenteric artery, and the venous drainage is through the superior mesenteric veins. So hope you understood the small intestine functions and the structure. Now we'll go on to the large intestine. The large intestine, also known as the large bowel or colon, it is the terminal or the last part of the gastrointestinal tract of the digestive system in vertebrates. Here, the water is absorbed here. Most of the water is absorbed here, and the remaining waste material is stored as feces before being removed by defecation. Defecation is the process of elimination of waste. As you can see the picture of the large intestine, this large intestine, it is around, the male colon is 166 centimeter and the female colon is 155 centimeter. The parts of the large intestine are, you have mainly there are 4 principal regions. You have the cecum, colon, rectum and the anal canal. So the cecum, the colon, the rectum and the anal canal. Now the opening from the ileum into the large intestine by a fold of mucous membrane called the ileocecal valve or the ileocecal sphincter. This allows the materials from the small intestine to pass into the large intestine. Hanging inferior to the ileocecal valve is the cecum. This is a blind pouch about 6 centimeter. So this is about 6 centimeter long and it is attached to the cecum. Attached to the cecum is a twisted coil tube measuring about 8 centimeter in length called the appendix. So you have the appendix here. It is otherwise called vermiform appendix. Now this vermiform appendix, the function of it is unknown. Mainly the function of it is worm shaped, as the word says. Vermiform means it is worm shaped. Now the open end of the cecum merges with a long tube called the colon, which is divided into the ascending, transverse colon, the descending colon and the sigmoid colon. Both the ascending and the descending colon are retroperitoneal. That means you can see it posteriorly placed, whereas the transverse and the sigmoid colon are not like that. You can find it, you can see it. The ascending colon ascends on the right side of the abdomen, reaches the inferior surface of the liver and turns abruptly to the left to form the right colic flexure. The colon continues across the abdomen to the left side as the transverse colon. It curves beneath the inferior end of the spleen on the left side as the left colic flexure and passes inferiorly to the level of the iliac crest as the descending colon. The sigmoid colon begins near the left iliac crest. It projects medially to the midline and it terminates as the rectum at about the third sacral vertebra. The rectum, it is around 8 inches or 20 centimeter. It lies anterior to the sacrum and coccyx, and terminal to the rectum is called the anal canal, which is 2 to 3 centimeters. The ascending colon, as I already told, it is about 20 centimeters and all the unwanted waste material is moved upwards towards the transverse colon by the action of peristalsis. Peristalsis is a radially symmetrical contraction and relaxation of muscles. By this, the food gets propagated into a wave-like form down the tube. As I already told you about the transverse and the descending colon, the descending colon is also called as a distal gut. The one function of the descending colon is to store the feces that will be emptied into the rectum. The sigmoid colon, as the word starts with S, it is S-shaped and the walls are muscular. They contract to increase the pressure inside the colon, causing the stool to move into the rectum. The rectum, which is the last section of the large intestine, it holds the formed fetus and awaits for it to get defecated or eliminated. The anus, which is an external opening of the rectum, the main function of the anus is to control the expulsion of the feces. There are 2 sphincters that control the exit of feces. There is the internal anal sphincter and the external anal sphincter. They are circular muscles which maintain the constriction of the orifice. Mainly it relaxes when there is a desire or when the normal physiological function takes place. The functions of the large intestine are mainly to absorb water and any remaining absorbable nutrients from the food before sending the indigestible matter to the rectum. The colon absorbs the vitamins that are created by the colonic bacteria. As I already told, the intrinsic factor helps in absorption of vitamin B12 that is present mainly in the colon. It helps in absorption also for vitamin K, also is getting absorbed only in the colon. The gut flora, the large intestine houses around 700 species of bacteria that perform variety of functions. Mainly it absorbs some of the products by the bacteria inhabiting this region. It also has undigested polysaccharides that are metabolized to short chain fatty acids by the bacteria in the large intestine. Now the blood supply is through the superior mesenteric artery and the inferior mesenteric artery, and the venous drainage is through the inferior and the superior mesenteric vein. Now we'll go on to the physiology of digestion. The mouth is the beginning of the digestive tract. Chewing breaks the food into pieces that are more easily digested, while saliva mixes with food to begin the process of breaking it down into a form your body can absorb and use. As I already told you, in the saliva we have two enzymes which contribute to chemical digestion in the mouth. First one is salivary amylase and lingual lipase. Salivary amylase initiates the breakdown of starch. Dietary carbohydrates are either monosaccharide and disaccharide sugars or complex polysaccharides. These are broken down into smaller substances, glucose molecules, through the salivary amylase. The next one is lingual lipase, which starts the digestion of dietary triglycerides into fatty acids and monoglycerides. Now, from the pharynx, food travels to the esophagus or the swallowing tube. Now, in the esophagus, from there, by the means of contractions called peristalsis, the food is being processed or delivered to the stomach. It is in a fluid, it forms a fluid bolus called the chyme, which goes into the stomach. Now, in the stomach, if when there is a distension of the stomach or when there is a presence of partially digested proteins or alcohol or any of the food, immediately the presence of it increases the secretion of gastrin, and it increases the generation of parasympathetic impulses in vagus nerves, and it causes the stimulation, mainly it causes the hormones to be produced. The hormones that are produced here are, we have the gastric juice that is being produced, we have the other hormones as I already told, the mucus, the gastrin, gastric lipase, pepsinogen, all these are being produced. The chief cells which produce pepsinogen, they help in the digestion of proteins. Gastric lipase helps in digestion of lipids or triglycerides, and the hydrochloric acid, it converts the pepsinogen into pepsin to get it converted to break down the proteins, and the mucus, it also helps in digestion. All these together helps in digestion of food in the stomach. So from the stomach, it enters the food enters through the lower, you can see the food from the stomach secretes acid and powerful enzymes that continue the process of breaking down the food. When it leaves the stomach, the food is churned and the consistency is made like a liquid or a paste called chyme, chyme. From there, the food moves to the small intestine. In the small intestine continues the process of breaking down the food by using enzymes released by the pancreas and the bile from the liver. As I already told you, the enzymes present in pancreas are, you have pancreatic amylase, which helps in the digestion of carbohydrates, trypsin, which helps in the digestion of protein, and pancreatic lipase, which helps in the digestion of triglycerides or lipids. Now the bile is a compound that aids in the digestion of fat and eliminates the waste products from the blood. Peristalsis is also at work in this organ. It moves the food through and mixing it up with the digestive secretions. Now when it comes to the duodenum is also largely responsible for continuing the process of breaking down the food, mainly with food along with jejunum and ileum being responsible for the absorption of nutrients into the bloodstream. Now here, as you can see, the pancreas secretes enzymes into the small intestine, as I already told, and they also break down the protein, fat and carbohydrates from the food we eat. Now in the small intestine, as you can see, there are the villi, which are small projections, which also help in absorption of nutrients, absorption of the food. That also takes place in the small intestine. Now the stool or the waste left over from the digestive process is passed through the colon by means of peristalsis, first in a liquid state and ultimately in solid form as the water is removed from the stool. The stool is stored in the sigmoid colon until a mass movement empties it into the rectum once or twice a day. So hope you understood the process of digestive system, the physiology of digestion. So we saw in digestive system the parts, we saw the digestive tract consists of two. One is we saw the digestive organs and then the accessory organs, and we dealt in detail about the accessory organs and the digestive organs, the anatomy of each of it and the functions, and then we went on to end up with the physiology of digestion. Hope you understood it. Thank you.